Okay, so we're at the bottom, page 66, right? Okay. Being a surveyor was a good thing. You couldn't make a lot of money. Father said that surveyors always knew about the good deals on land and could get rich speculating. So that part of it sounded good. But I wasn't so sure about all that studying. I don't know if I am smart enough, sir, I said, mostly just to be modest again. Oh, certainly you are, Tim. He sat down at the long table. Tim, how about getting me a pint of beer? And one here for Tom, too. Tom Worrups did spare work for Mr. Heron. Sometimes he ran messages for him, too. He didn't sit because he was only an Indian, but stood leaning against the wall. I got mugs down from the shelf and filled them and served them around, including one for Father. He sat down at the table too, and I went back to rushing the chair. What do you hear from Sam? Mr. Heron said. Nothing, Father said. I know he didn't want to talk about it, but he couldn't be rude to Mr. Heron. He never writes? No. There we are, honey. Your favorite, put it up here so I can see where you are. They weren't paying any attention to me, so I took a quick glance at Tom Worrups. He was standing there holding his mug of beer, and his face was blank. What does it mean when your face is blank?
Like no expression. No emotion.
Good. No expression, no emotion. Good. I couldn't figure out which side he was on. He lived on Mr. Reed's land, and Mr. Reed was a patriot. But he ran messages for Mr. Heron, and Mr. Heron was a Tory. It's a shame about Sam, Mr. Heron said. My father shrugged, but he didn't say anything. Mr. Heron must have known that Father didn't want to talk about Sam, because he said perhaps there'd be a way of finding out where he is. If he wants to see us, he knows where we live. Mr. Heron nodded. Well, actually, I didn't come to talk about Sam. I want to talk about Tim. I have a little job I thought Tim might do for me. What do you think Tim's thinking right now? Oh. I need a boy to walk down to Fairfield for me. I watched Father's face. His eyes got narrow, and he stared straight ahead. Why a boy, Mr. Heron? What's wrong with Tom? Heron shrugged. Pretty hard for a strange Indian to walk down there without getting stopped every 5 miles. Nobody's going to bother a boy. It was a scary idea, but it was exciting. It would be a real adventure, but of course, I knew that I wasn't supposed to have any opinion in the matter, so I kept my mouth shut. Oh, what is he going to be carrying? Father said. Just some business letters. Nothing important. Father said nothing but stared down at his beer, and Mr. Heron took a drink, and then he said, There's no danger, life. Nobody's going to bother a boy. Business letters? Father said. Yes, business letters. I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. I can do it, Father. I can walk down there tomorrow morning, and I can be back by supper time. Be quiet, Tim. I'd pay him a shilling. My father stared into the beer again, and slowly he began to shake his head. No, Mr. Heron, he said. No, I've got one mixed up in this bloody war already. I am not going to let another one go. Mr. Heron paused before he spoke. I said they were business letters, life, just business letters. Father stared at him. No, Mr. Heron, no. When Father said no, he meant no. It disappointed me. It would have been a good adventure walking down to Fairfield on my own. It was long. It was on Long Island Sound. I'd only been there maybe 2 or 3 times in my life when I'd gone down with Father and Sam to buy rum. Carrying letters down to Fairfield would give me something to boast about to Sam. But Father said no, and that was that. And Mr. Heron knew it. Mr. Heron finished his beer and stood up. I had more faith in you than that, life, he said. I thought I could count on you. We're all making sacrifices these days. My father was standing too. I've made a sacrifice, Mr. Heron. I've lost a son. You know I have no love for the rebels, but this is one war I'm not going to fight. Mr. Heron nodded, and he and Tom Worrups left. I picked up the beer mugs to clean them. I wish you'd let me go, Father. Nothing would have happened to me. Father put his hand on my shoulder. Those weren't business letters, Tim. What? I was surprised. I don't know what Heron's game is. He talks like a Tory, all right, but he doesn't all quite make sense. Best thing is not to get involved with him. You can be sure any letters he's sending around aren't just ordinary business. Now let's forget that he ever came in here. He stared into my eyes, and I stared back. Yes, Father, I said. I couldn't forget about it. Mr. Heron had wanted me to carry some sort of war message or spy report or something. And that night, I just laid in bed in the loft and couldn't stop thinking about it. Oh, it would scare me, all right, walking down to Fairfield with my spy messages. But I wanted to do it because it'd give me something to boast about to Sam. He had always been having the adventures. He was going to come home with terrific stories about being in the army and fighting and all that. I wanted to have something to tell, too. Why should he have all the glory? Why shouldn't I have some, too? So I wanted him to respect me and be proud of me and not to think of me as just his little brother anymore. I couldn't score telling points in debates the way he did, but I could be just as brave as he was and doing daring things, too. It made me angry with Father for not letting me go. He was right. Not with what Sam was doing. Of course, Father hadn't let Sam go. Sam had run away. But still, it made me angry to think about it, and I slammed the bed with my fist. If only I could find a way to sneak off for the day. I thought about it some more the next morning when I was milking old Prue, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. By the time I got Prue milked and driven out of the pasture and fed the chickens and collected the eggs and hung the milk down in the well to keep it cool, I was plain boiling. It wasn't fair, that was all. And when I got back to the house, I was angry enough to stand up to Father. He was sitting at the taproom table drinking tea. I faced him, and I stood straight as I could, and I said, Father, why can't I carry messages for Mr. Heron? You are on the Tory side, too. He glanced at me, and he blew on his tea to cool it. Because I said so. Well, that's no reason, I said. He stared at me. If you don't stop arguing with me, I'll thrash you, Timmy. I don't care, I said. If we are supposed to be loyalists, then we should help. He slammed his fist down on the table and then jerked his thumb toward his chest. I'll manage the politics in this family, he said. Father! Timothy, darn it, I'm going to. And then he stopped. And I knew why. He shouted at Sam, and Sam had run away. And he was scared that if he shouted at me, I'd run away too. He said calmly as he could. Who does this remind you of, that controlling the anger?
Captain Smith.
Captain Smith. Yeah, Captain Smith. And then Sam learned in Blood on the River. Yes. It's dangerous. Tim, please. Think of that you're only a child. They won't hurt you, but they will. They have been killing children in this war. They don't care. They'll throw you in a prison ship and let you rot. You know what happens to people on those prison ships? They don't last very long. Cholera gets them, or consumption. Now, who remembers what cholera is?
It's a disease.
Yes, it's that really contagious, deadly disease. Or something else, and they die. Tim, it isn't worth it. I knew he was right, that it wasn't worth taking the chance. I wanted to do it anyway, but there wasn't any use in arguing about it with Father. 2 weeks later, I figured out how to do it. I was out on the road in front of the tavern trying to clean the mud and the dirt off the boards we laid down in the spring when Jerry Sanford came up the road. Where are you going? I said. The shadow running, he said. He held out a coil of fishing line with hooks and weights attached. Father said I should go try my hand at it. You're lucky. Look what I have to do. I'll ask your father if you can go. He won't let me. There's too much to do around the tavern. Ask him. So I went inside to where he was hollystoning the taproom table. Father, Jerry Sanford is going after shad. Can I? You've got a lot of things to do here. Well, if we caught a lot, we could salt them down. What would salting them down do?
Make them fresh.
Keep them fresh, right? It would preserve them. A lot of salt preserves the fish. He thought about it. All right, go. It would be a nice change to have some fish chowder. So we went back to Jerry's house and got another line and some hooks. And then we walked down to the mill stream, which really was the Aztuck River. And there was a dam there for the mill, and below the dam, a couple of 100 yards, was a large pool. In the spring, the shad ran upriver to breed, but they couldn't get past the mill dam, and the pool was just swarming with them. We caught dozens. We had a terrific time. Father was pleased. He really enjoyed fish chowder. And best of all, what?
Our next excuse to get away.
Oh no. No, it's about time to go. If you did not get to finish reading chapter 4, if you're not completely comfortable with the timeline events, you have about 7 minutes to keep reading. Or you can reread chapter 5, but don't go on.